be quite practical and hands-on. Today, though, we felt it would be really useful for us and for everyone else to hear from colleagues in other institutions around the topic of embedding continuous improvement in our universities. So we are going to hear from the University of Leeds, Middlesex, Hartpury and UCL, talking about their experiences. We're not going to go into breakouts for feedback, but I'll share a link to a Miro board once the talks are finished, so that if you have any feedback, if you have any comments, if you have anything that you want to share from your experience, feel free to leave that feedback on the Miro board. Yeah, so we are recording, so better share with colleagues as well after the event. So without further ado, stop sharing and I'll introduce our first speaker. So first up is the University of Leeds. So I'm assuming we have Liz Simpson, Katie Moore and Charlie Davis. I can certainly see Liz on the screen. And I don't want to steal your thunder, so I'll hand over to you and off you go with your presentation. There will be time for questions after each speaker. So if you've got any questions, Liz, do you want to take questions during, or do you want to wait till you finished?
We will, I think we'll present and then have questions at the end, if that's okay.
Thanks,
Katie, for sharing our slides. Okay, we'll go ahead.
Can you see them? Right.
Yes,
Oh,
we
good.
can. Yeah, thanks, Katie. Thanks, Linda. Okay, I wasn't expecting to go first, but that's great. Pressure is on. But yeah, welcome everybody. Quick introductions. I'm Liz Simpson and I am relatively new to the role of a CI specialist. However, have worked operationally in student education for most of my career, actually, and at the University of Leeds for 20 years. I'll be co-presenting today with my colleague Katie Moore, who has worked in a lean and CI capacity for far longer than me. So she's going to present our first few slides, providing the context of where the team started, what needed to change, the action that we took, and then I will oh, sorry, my notes have just gone. I'm going to go talk to you about sort of like where we are now and what's next for our service as well. Unfortunately, our colleague Chailey isn't able to present with us today, but the three of us represent the CI team at the University of Leeds. So we're a very small service, but we have big ambitions. So I'm going to hand over to you, Katie, now, and you're going to cover the first few slides.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, so I think Liz has pretty much covered what we're going to talk about in today's session. So where we started, what we needed to change, the action that we've taken, where we are now, and what's next. So I'll dive straight in. Okay, so the CI journey at Leeds sort of began in 2016. It began when 12 staff members from across the organisation were trained up as lean practitioners. It was a new thing for the organisation, a bit experimental. I was in that first cohort, and the idea was that once we were trained, we'd work with teams within our service area to deliver small-scale improvement projects. So at this point, nobody else within the organisation really knew about lean or recognised the benefits of having lean practitioners. So sort of given that organisational lack of understanding or support in place, our activities kind of dwindled and nothing else really happened after that. In 2017, that's when I took up a role in a new process improvement team that was headed up by Paula Dunn, who used to, I think, be a member of the steering group on the Lean HE. The team was embedded within a transformational programme. So our remit was to enable process improvement activity and to support our student education service to improve processes. And that was ahead of the implementation of what was to be either a new or a simplified student record system. So our initial approach sought to increase capability in applying lean concepts, mainly to improve ways of working. But it wasn't easy, and the progress was really slow on account of issues arising with systems that hadn't previously been anticipated. And in terms of the programme, it led to some rapidly evolving objectives and competing priorities. So we then decided to focus on what we could control. I think that's a theme for continuous improvement, which was to develop a comprehensive training suite known as Lean Ways of Working, and this would be supported by Lean practitioners. So as you can see here, we trained another 2 cohorts within our SES, and they would help us to deliver projects as well as our introduction to Lean training. So in terms of what that suite looked like, so I've purposely left the horribly jarring branding on there with some beautiful colour clashes. But the training looked a bit like this. So this was affectionately known as our House of Lean. It was designed around the Lean competency system to deliver appropriate training at all levels within the business and to ensure support for process improvement activity. It was ambitious, and there were 800 people within our SES and we knew we couldn't train everyone ourselves because at that point in time, I think we only had 2 facilitators. So this is where we trained our Lean practitioners to deliver the introduction training. And this training was a 3-hour workshop. It introduced Lean principles via action learning. Some of you might be familiar with the plane game. So where you sort of replicate a factory production line and you fold paper aeroplanes and learn about different concepts of process improvement. I can see some hearts appearing. People know what I'm talking about, that's good. The idea being that this would provide staff at all levels with an awareness of Lean and process improvement before we started working on projects linked to the programme or those run by Lean practitioners. So our engagement there was really good. We managed to train 400 people. However, due to our position on the programme, we made very slow progress in developing the other components of the approach. So that revolved around the development of training for managers, and the commitment to the approach was a particular sticking point. And the next slide that I'm going to show you kind of goes into the details as to why. So here we sort of started to consider what needed to change. So in March 2020, COVID happened. It brought an abrupt end to pretty much everything that we were doing, but it also provided a really good opportunity to pause and reflect on our approach. So this slide provides an overview of the issues with the Lean Ways of Working approach and what we needed to change for our next iteration. So there was a lack of overarching strategy, which meant there was really an unclear purpose and a lack of understanding around benefits and the return on investment. We had Lean practitioners, but they were mostly very lonely. Their support wasn't supported by strategy. Our leaders and managers, due to an institutional lack of knowledge, meant that there were plenty of projects that were surfaced, but nobody wanted to free up practitioner time. And the improvement was viewed as additional work, and managers really struggled to see the benefits of that. We were also sort of constrained by programme-led objectives. It was a really complex and reactive environment, and it led to completing objectives for our team and the business, as well as uncertainty and frequent top-down change. So it wasn't really conducive to timely development or a rollout for gaining buy-in. We were also focused on training individuals. They basically signed up themselves to our training, and we eventually termed this the sheep dip approach. So, you know, people were enthusiastic after attending the training. They'd been in the dip and they came out really enthusiastic, but they were returning to their teams disempowered because their colleagues had no understanding of the concepts that they were talking about, the language that was being used, and consequently it didn't really lead to any sustained action, or in many cases any action at all. It was also Lean principles based. So the feedback that we received was that the concepts were too abstract and it made it difficult for colleagues to apply and share within their teams, and that led to a lack of buy-in. So during this time of reflection, our then head of CI sort of worked some magic with continuous improvement, and it was then identified as a key enabler for change within the organisation, and that meant that it was included in the university's 10-year strategy. So for us, this was a huge step forward because it demonstrated appetite and support for continuous improvement at the highest level. And this also coincided with our team breaking away from the programme and becoming a service available to the whole organisation. So in terms of our reviewed approach, it looked like this. It was basically to pursue CI to make it for it to become culture and part of everything that we do. So what we do in our day to day and not something extra. So we had that already, sorry, we had it underpinned by strategy. So that provided a reference point for everyone within the organisation and indicated that the work was important and very much needed. The objectives were business led rather than program led. So it enabled the CI team to work more closely with customers to design an approach to meet their needs directly. We were able to remove the complexity, so referring back to the lean principles, we sort of simplified the language and removed the jargon to make the training accessible and relatable. And we also recognised that we needed a scalable and repeatable approach. So we stripped it back to essential techniques taken from a number of methodologies. So Lean Six Sigma, there's a bit of design thinking in there as well, to create an approach basically that works at any level for anything, whether that's day-to-day work or projects. We also recognised that we still needed to increase capability, but in this new approach, we were applying a coaching method or coaching approach. So we felt this was really key to embedding CI as culture, because teams would be coached to make improvements in their day-to-day work. There were shared benefits of improvement and staff and skill development, which would lead to a more sustainable and empowering approach. We also sought to develop an organisational network that was to enable staff to share and learn from each other, and most importantly, celebrate their successes. So in reality, what does this look like? I'm just going to focus on two of the sort of streams from our enabling strategy. So the enabling strategy was developed in 2021. We had a huge customer consultation exercise, and that coincided with the development of a visual identity for our service, which you can see here. It's this sort of cream, gold, black and red to make us stand out. And so once again, we were focusing on developing capability. The difference this time was the coaching approach, so the benefits of which being increased buy-in on account of increased empowerment and confidence in individuals and teams to make decisions and effect change themselves. So the introduction to CI training has been designed for teams and their managers or staff across service areas who work with the same processes, and it's to enable them to work collaboratively on their own real-life examples throughout that training. The focus is on improving their day-to-day work. So we're talking small incremental here. We're not talking big projects or big changes. And working on processes that are within their gift to change. So reducing that pool of stakeholders down to things that they actually have influence over. Delivery spread over 10 weeks, so that's 5 2.5-hour modules every couple of weeks, and that provides teams with the opportunity to embed their learning in between sessions with full support from their manager. And we do talk to managers about how they can support that embedding as well. Fundamentally, the training is delivered and supported by our specially trained CI coaches, and that's the other strand that I'm talking about at the bottom. So our coaches are recruited mainly through our CI network, and as part of their training, they receive specialist coaching support from an external training partner. Other people here might work with him. It's John Drysdale of No Guru. And he delivers tailored communication, facilitation and coaching training, which all contribute to helping us to move away from the existing culture of tell. So that's teams referring to the highest paid person in the room to tell them what the solution is, to a culture of ask. So that's teams collaborating with each other to ask open questions and increase their understanding to enable them to feel empowered to generate their own ideas. So that's my part done. Hopefully I've not talked too much and nobody's bored, but I'm going to hand over to Liz now to tell us more about where we're up to with our current approach.
Thanks, Katie. Thank you for the next slide. Okay, great. Thanks ever so much for that. So where are we now? We train around 12 teams per year from our professional services, and this is a list of the areas we've worked with so far. Both our digital education and education engagement services have a strategy to offer the CI training to every member of staff. So these, I guess, are kind of our priority areas for us at the moment, where we're training coaches up from those areas in particular. So as we train more CI coaches, can you just do the next animation. Thanks, Katie. We aim to increase the number of teams we train each year. Coaches we recruit need to demonstrate that they've made changes or improvements in their current or previous work, and that they have some experience in presenting, training, or facilitating workshops. Ideally, coaches deliver the intro to CI training in their own service area, as this supports continuation of embedding that CI culture as a way of working. However, if they don't necessarily have a team to work with, or if it's not the right time for a team from their area to go through the training, we ask the coach to train other areas, a team from other areas. And there are benefits for coaches to do this. So retaining coaches has been quite difficult in the current HE environment. They have left the organisation, they lose interest, they realise the pressure of their day job is just too much. However, some of our coaches feedback that it's their favourite part of their work at the uni, so that's really positive to hear. A learning point for us was to ask coaches to personally express interest for the role of the CI coach rather than be put forward by their manager or their service lead. We found that we had a higher dropout rate from colleagues who had been put forward for the role rather than expressing their own interest. Beyond their initial training, we're really keen to support their CPD. And we run developing your practice style training twice per year. Sometimes we bring in the external coaching and training guy, John Drysdale, who we work with to support the coaches. And we also just encourage that informal networking between ourselves and the coaches, between coaches throughout the year as well. So I'm going to quickly cover another couple of aspects that we're leading on from our team, which also support that CI culture strategy. We oversee our CI network, and we also coordinate some CI project work. So the network is run via an MS team. And I would say it's very much organically grown since 2021. We've not done a big kind of promotion exercise on getting people as part of the network. We promote CI training opportunities via this network, and we have dedicated channels. I would say the most active being the process automation channel, where colleagues are just sharing good practice, offering peer-to-peer support as automation software such as Power Automate becomes more user-friendly. So that's a really positive thing to see. As a CI service, we also provide some project support. That there needs to be a clear strategic purpose and where we're bringing colleagues together from more than one service. We approach project work from the context of working with and upskilling colleagues in the CI approach. And just importantly, all of this activity has that CI enablement strand running through it. And the scalable and repeatable approach will help us ensure that the CI culture continues to thrive. So what's next? Could I have the next slide? Thanks, Katie. Okay, so we've started to gain some evidence that the coaching and the training approach is bringing benefits to those we're working with, but we acknowledge that we need a more structured approach to this. So that's definitely sort of like a strategic objective for our team. We need to broaden our offering to more areas of the university. There are still pockets where there's little knowledge of how the CI approach can support organisational effectiveness. A CI strategy refresh is needed so that it aligns to our developing transformation officers offer. Within the transformation office, a new service is being launched in 2024 called the Design Office. And this is essentially the transformation officers, the TO's front door to change initiatives. And it will offer a triage service to assess whether business cases are in shape to progress to major transformational programs or projects, or as an organisation, whether we actually need to consider the CI approach before we spend our money. So I'm really conscious of time. So future opportunities are varied and this list isn't exhaustive. Some conversation has begun for most of these things and they're at various stages of considering the kind of what's next phase. I think for us as a team, we need a bit of strategic direction after a period of no service leader. We have a new head of service who is due to start, I think, in the spring, and we very much look forward to working with them. So I think I'm going to stop there. I will take a drink and then we are open to your questions.
Thanks, Liz. I'm not sure how I stop sharing. I'm just gonna try and take the slides down.
But if anybody's got any questions about the approach that we've taken at the University of Leeds, please speak up.
Any questions? Anyone got their hands up? Who have we got? Such
We've
a
got
long
Ryan.
Yes.
Ryan, I think.
Hello. How you doing?
Hi.
I just wanted to see if you, with your coaching style that you mentioned, was there anything? What did that look like? Is that just kind of like a typical coaching method, or did you look for something specifically lean, or did you develop something yourselves? What does that look like?
I think basically this originated because one of my ex-colleagues had a coaching qualification, and I think she realised in terms of embedding culture, this was from basically observations that we'd made on how meetings were running, how basically ways of working and work was being carried out. There was very much this sort of defection to the highest paid person in the room, and there was a lot of top down, oh, we're waiting for someone to tell us what to do. And actually we just needed to create this culture where people started to ask questions. Nobody was really asking questions in meetings, and that's where the coaching approach came from. So in terms of the coaches, they are trained to be facilitators. So yes, they have a degree of CI knowledge, but it's kind of working from the principle that the people who are doing the work have the answers themselves. It just needs people to be asking questions, on the right questions, for them to kind of come to this realization and empower them so that they can make the improvements themselves.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
That makes sense.
I think it's that ownership as well.
Yeah.
So if we coach them to come up with their own solutions, they take ownership of that piece of work and then actually make sure it's embedded into their ways of working.
Yeah, we're finding similar, and I don't know if it's an appropriate time to say it, but there is one of the things that I found really useful. I don't think anyone else has come across it. Is something called Toyota Kata by Mike Rother. Yeah, we found that to be super effective in that context. So
yeah, so I think sort of in the background we recognized it was all about the kata and the change of habit and getting into that the swing of asking those practicing asking those questions and creating that as a new habit. Definitely.
Cool, thank you.
Hi, Shane.
Hi, thank you. That's a really great presentation. Can I ask a question? It was on one of your early slides about the how you went from the as-is situation, and then CI was kind of written into the strategy. Could you tell us a little bit about how that happened and then what the impact was of that strategic investment in CI?
So, I mean, I can't really speak for Paula because she's obviously not here anymore, but she was the one, it was our head of CI who was having those conversations, and her line manager was the deputy chief operating officer. So she had the direct link in there to have those conversations. And it was about kind of understanding what had come from the business, the conversations she was having with them, the things that we were kind of discovering as CI specialists working with the business, and the conversations that we were having, and just kind of looking at what the specific issues were in terms of rolling out continuous improvement. Well, it was called process improvement then, and there were just loads of issues in terms of it not being recognised, or it was recognised as something additional that people were having to do. And the fact that we didn't have anything that kind of underpinned it as a priority for the organisation. So although we could kind of evangelise about the benefits of it, it didn't appear like anybody wanted it from the senior leadership, and we needed to have that visibility, I think, within the organisation. So yeah, I think she made it very clear that yes, this was something that we needed to draw attention to if we wanted to move forwards and reap the benefits of it.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions before we move
Linda,
on?
There's one being put in the chat.
Okay, yeah.
You've mentioned benefits and celebrating success. Do you collect metrics to then back up the evidence, the impact of the change stroke projects that have been completed?
So, yeah, so thank you for that question, and I did anticipate this one actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, within our training offering at the moment, well, just to kind of say, no, we don't, as a service, we don't feel really that it's our responsibility to collect the benefits. Yes, we can collect benefits of us having delivered the training, but actually the benefits are delivered by the teams who participate in the training. So the training has been designed in such a way that it kind of takes them through a process to make improvements, well, identify issues, focus on customer needs, do some root cause analysis, understand creating a baseline and measuring, so that they can measure their improvements. So out of the end of it, once they've got their actions, they've identified what they're going to prioritize, it's kind of their responsibility to then get on with it. But they will have gone through that process to identify the benefits or the potential benefits. So actually, when that is then implemented, they should be able to go back and say, oh, okay, yeah, have we achieved this? Have we achieved that? There are conversations about how organisationally we could start collating the benefits of continuous improvement. We haven't made huge strides forward with that. I think because, and we've sort of held back on it as well. So we don't want to start introducing KPIs or referring to things as KPIs because they can be quite intimidating. And I think that if you want to develop a culture, it's first important to kind of just get people doing it or doing something to demonstrate that they can and what they're achieving at the end of it. And we can celebrate that success by asking for case studies and getting people to share things on the CI network. And we're quite happy to be cheerleaders for people and congratulate them. But at the moment, no, there isn't an organisational mechanism for gathering those benefits.
Okay, thanks, Katie. We've got some other questions coming up in the chat. Can I just beg your indulgence and sort of hold those, because I'm conscious we've got 3 other speakers and I'm conscious that I want everyone to have an opportunity to speak. And perhaps if we don't manage to answer them in the session, perhaps we can answer them via a follow-up email afterwards. I'll perhaps put them in the Miro so we can answer through that way. Okay, thank you, Liz and Katie. So next we're on to Middlesex University and we have Mila, John and Helen, I believe, who are speaking. So I've got some waves. Over to you.
Thank you. We've actually got the whole team here today, so we thought we would tell all from all sides of the business sort of thing. So yeah, we're from Middlesex. We're the business enhancement team. So we have Kelly, who is our deputy COO, and she heads up the team. We also have Mila and John, who are our business enhancement managers, Saraman, our business analyst, and myself, I'm Helen, the business enhancement facilitator. So that team has been together since 2014, so 10 years. We, again, similar to what they were saying, you know, from our lead colleagues, that continuous improvement plays a really significant role in the university's strategy. So it means we've got that support from the top down sort of thing, which is really helpful, especially when you're looking at the sort of challenges that we're facing as a sector at the moment. Our main purpose is to collaborate with individuals and teams across the organisation so that we ensure that we're delivering value for money. As a team, we embrace change as a norm, but there's a real focus on people, on students and staff, and how change is being used to improve their lives. As I say, we've been going 10 years. This didn't happen overnight. So there was a lot of lessons learned along the way. I've only been with the team about 6 months. So I'm going to hand over to Kelly and Mila, who can tell you a bit more about that journey and how it got really embedded into our culture.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm Kelly Speller. I am indeed the Deputy Chief Operating Officer at Middlesex, and that is a delightfully flattering picture that my colleagues have decided to put in the mural. Thank you everyone for that. Helen's absolutely right. We have been now in existence for pretty much 10 years, and it has been a hell of a journey. I think there were a number of things that we've reflected on over the years, and listening to colleagues in the last presentation, and a lot of that resonates. We've made quite considerable changes, I think, probably in the last 5 years. We very much started out, we were under the CFO at the time. We were very much an efficiencies, business improvement team, very much focused around lean methodology, understanding that the people were a huge part of that, but it was how we were going to translate that into real terms into the organisation. We were mainly focused on professional services at the time. We were pretty much told to keep your hands off of the academic side of things, because that's not what you're here for. That has changed significantly over the last few years. I think we understood quite quickly that we couldn't just work with the terminology that we had from the lean side of things. It wasn't landing particularly well. We started to use language that was much more compatible to the organisation, I would say. We weren't losing any of the key principles from lean, but we were very much conscious of the fact that we were losing our audience if we weren't particularly careful. We started very much from a ground up position. We did have executive sponsorship, but we weren't necessarily having the role modelling from that executive sponsorship, and we were trying to do most of our skills transfer through projects and programs of work, which was kind of sticking to a degree, but not in the way that we really needed it to, for it to become a core part of the organisation. And then so we started to work on a much more skills transfer focused piece of so we have a practitioners program that we worked up, which we found was having much more impact than just working in a project-led way. We really worked very hard at the beginning, empowering people on the ground level, so helping them understand like what data was for, what impact it could have to have evidence behind your decision making, use of visual management and building transparency. And I think that was incredibly helpful. And a very early part of that was also start thinking about how we measured benefits, how we collated that information to demonstrate the impact that we had, because it's really difficult for people to see sometimes how what we do translates into real terms and real savings. So we put in an awful lot of effort right from the start to be able to measure and demonstrate that impact. And that is we're probably the only part of the organisation who still does that successfully, I would say, at the moment. And that's now being translated into the wider work of the PMO and other areas in the university. I'm gonna let Mila do the next bit, because we started to evolve quite a lot, and she was quite instrumental in pieces around service design and change management, which I think has probably helped us turn a corner and really start to get things embedded across the organisation.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, absolutely. So as Kelly mentioned, as she was walking you through the things that worked really quickly and the things that we also picked up pretty quickly that weren't quite working well, such as the jargon, almost like the sole focus of improvement work being very process driven, very data driven, almost like feeling a bit too dogmatic. We've realized that we needed to change our approach and better understand almost like the human impact of issues that people were feeling in their own areas, but also better understanding the experience of our service users. So we integrated different approaches with Lean. So the approaches we looked at were change management. So we used as a model, we use ProSci and ATCA as a change management tool. That was also integrated in our continuous improvement training to explain to people not only their own experience as they were navigating change, but also help them understand the experience of the internal and external stakeholders they were working with as they were navigating change. In addition to that, we also brought in service design, so design thinking as an approach. We spent a lot of time focusing around the research side of things, so spending more time with students, spending more time with users to understand their needs and their requirements ahead of embarking on, say, coming up with solutions, ideations, and we also spent a lot of time and focused on experimentation. So we injected a few more concepts, which helped us change the perception that our stakeholders had around problem solving as a concept and as an activity. So where at the beginning people felt, oh, this group of people are coming to us with this very dogmatic way of working, very sequential, you must have a console, you must have a problem statement, you must have this, you must have that. Sure, there are some things that, of course, we have to have. We have to have data to substantiate the size of a problem. We have to have an understanding of what we're trying to achieve. But we injected the opportunity for them to connect with their users to better understand the requirement. We help them prototype and embrace the idea that, you know, things don't always work out, and that's fine. And if what you're trying to do in the first instance doesn't work, it's okay. We will have, you know, collected data to help us understand what we need to do next. So those two elements we brought into our continuous improvement training, which we're still delivering today. So far, we have trained 56 colleagues across the universities. These are professional services and academic staff. We had deans as well attend that training. Again, that helped create that pool of advocates. And it certainly helped us also from a project delivery perspective, not only work with professional services team, but with the faculties.
Sorry, Minnie,
yeah.
I was just going to add to that as well. I think the other thing that was a bit of a game changer was the way that we started to source the work. Obviously, when we started, we were literally at a zero level of maturity as an organisation. It was completely new to everybody. So we were pretty much pulling in work from on an ad hoc basis. And it was a couple of years in where we actually started to align our work to the sort of strategic priorities with very sort of high level sponsors who were bought into the whole thing and allowed us to have a bit more of a mandate when we went into different areas. Because I think it's fine if you're pushing on an open door, but where you have really complex organizational problems, you do need something that says, yeah, okay, this is the team who are going to come and help you figure that out. And that was probably one of the pivotal moments for us, I think, having a very clear line of sight to the strategy and the work that we were doing. So yeah, I think that was the other thing that goes back to the advocacy piece, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think what John is going to talk to you about is essentially what that network looks like today.
Yeah. So moving across, here's an example of our kind of reach. We do tend to try and pull a bit of like an impact report together on an annual basis to talk a bit about what we've done across Middlesex. And obviously reach is quite a difficult thing to show, but what we've tried to do is make it an image. So you can see here, although this diagram does need a little bit of an update, this reflects our position, I think, as of probably about 5 or 6 months ago. 116 users, 43 continuous improvement practitioners, and about 12 coaches. Now, this reflects our community of practice, that our active user base, if you like, for continuous improvement tools. Each of these has an initial in them. You won't be able to see it very clearly, but each of these dots has an initial in them that reflects a colleague that we've been working with, either to train them, to support them on a project, and they picked up some tools and they're actively using those tools on a daily basis, essentially. And we've taken a bit of a pay it forward approach with our continuous improvement practitioner training. So every year we have cohorts of colleagues that come onto the training. At the end of the year, we work with a few people who have an interest and demonstrate the kind of mindset that might be appropriate for coaching support, to then step up and then offer coaching support to the next year's cohorts, and also to try and encourage people to develop and continue to grow. So we offer our training at a level kind of 1B LCS accreditation, and then from there on in we help support them using the GROW model for coaching, but directed towards continuous improvement as well. So someone earlier mentioned this idea of kata. It is about coaching for improvement, but it's also about using that GROW model to help facilitate some of that through our coaching network. We have historically, well, back in the day, I should say, we started off with quite a rigid approach to communities of practice. We started off with a far larger number of people that we'd worked with on projects and to pull the kind of numbers through the door, if you like. But we found relatively quickly that some people just either couldn't get on board with it or didn't buy into it. And so we spent a bit of time really refining our group of people down to those who did demonstrate some commitment and some competency, if you like, towards using these tools. And that's how we've continued to grow our network. Our practitioner program feeds our community of practice, and we also try and run lunch and learn events. So what started as quite a rigid kind of a big community of practice group meeting, you know, once a quarter, relatively quickly after a year or two turned into what was like bookended communities of practices, then with a bunch of lunch and learn style events that focused on our network skills gaps, where they felt they were less confident with key tools or key approaches, and key enablers like data gathering and collection and analysis. And we started to kind of pepper those lunch and learn events in to try and help provide those people with the skills and capability or confidence that they feel they needed to go out and deliver things more effectively. It also, in all of this, I know there's been a lot of talk of data. We are in a place where we have focused on the value for money over a number of years. We've kind of tried to adhere to the initial HE categories that were listed for value for money reporting for universities as a kind of approach, if you like, for good practice, being able to demonstrate our impact. And we are in a position where we can talk about the value, if you like, with detailed figures about the value of our continuous improvement program, training program. We can talk about where we started to adopt things like automation, that we understand the kind of return on investment of time and effort. And that's something that's also kind of bolted onto this. We've begun to build a kind of network of citizen developers across Middlesex for use of automation, using platforms that are relatively easy to access, like Power Automate, that can bolt onto people's Microsoft packages and help them create little quick wins here and there once they've managed to work out the fiddly bits of Power Automate. Yeah, so when it comes to our community, we do continue to build it, and this helps describe our reach. It tends to sit across most of all of the executive portfolios, which is quite nice. And over time, we've probably worked with 60 to 70 professional service teams and academic departments as well through this approach. So if there are any questions at all, I think we're probably happy to take them. I can see there's a few bits and pieces in the chat.
I've been trying to answer them as you talk.
Cheers, Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly's been responding to some of the questions. Are there any burning questions that you want to ask before anyone wants to ask before we move on? Fine. Hopefully we might have a bit of time if anything comes to you, but continue to put things in the chat and then we can we'll consolidate the answers afterwards. So our third speaker is Penny Allen from Hartpury University. I know Penny's here because she was here early. Over to you.
Thank you very much for that. Let me just bring up my slides. So my name is Penny. I am the Head of Continuous Improvement at Hartpury University and College. And I'm going to be taking you through how we have used metrics specifically to embed RCI culture across the institution, which this has come up a few times in other presentations, and in the chat I've seen some discussion around metrics going on. So hopefully this will add into that discussion and give you our point of view on what we've done. So first off, I'm going to give you a bit of institutional context because we're not one of the bigger universities, but hopefully this will demonstrate where we are with it. So we're a specialist land-based education There we go. We're a specialist land-based education institution. We are based in the beautiful rural Gloucestershire, and that building in the background is our the CI offices are in there. We have a mix of FE and HE students across 5 departments, and within that we have some specialist departments. So, for example, our Elite Sports Academy, who work with students who are competing at national and international levels while studying with us on our programmes. Which leads me on very nicely to this corridor, which is in one of our Sports Academy buildings. This reflects the kind of Hartpury institution-wide approach to improvement and demonstrable excellence in the things that we strive for. So we knew that we were always going to have metrics as a central part of our work. And the idea of success, building success, is really reflected in the experiences we've had, where we've had reluctant teams to work with. Our ability to prove the success that we've already had has attracted others to come and work with us on big and small improvements alike. So we're a small team of 4 who sit in the Continuous Improvement and Digital Services Directorate, but we're independent of digital services. So we sit across all of our departments, and we're dedicated to supporting Hartpury in its mission to strive for excellence in all areas as we go across. So now we've got a little bit of context of what we did. I started in late 2019, where we launched the team in our services in February 2020, and we had a lovely staged rollout plan. There was toolkits, all kinds of things. We had coffee mornings and a biscuit tin, all things that were very important. We also had multiple ways for opportunities to be submitted, so they could come from either individual staff members or all the way up to toolkits. And as most of us found, 2019 March, February came around and the majority of the work was put on hold due to COVID. And for 2 years, the CI team was really just one part-time member, one part-time project manager, and we were still delivering improvement projects, but it was a very different approach than we had envisaged. It was important that we could keep to the core of our purpose and still make sure that we were doing those small, sustainable changes to support teams across Hartpury. And for me, I found it personally really lovely that during a turbulent time we could have this metric proof of what we were going through and what we were able to achieve as we were kind of going through it. So given that institutional background, I'm breaking up talking about the 3 different ways that we have metrics have helped us embed it into our organisation. So the first one we're going to talk about is measuring. So at its core, we're able to provide metrics about the impact that each of our projects we've worked on has made. How do we do that is obviously the first question we'll come up with. So first off, we always start with a set of baseline metrics. These are collected when an individual raises a request, or if we get a more strategic request from the senior managers, we will then ensure that they go through and give us baseline measurements as we're going through. As you can see here on our opportunity for improvement form, we look at things like staff time savings, process touch points, reductions in reworking, lots and lots of different elements to the metrics we get. But we have to have something, and the rest of my team who are on this call will agree that I do get a little firm about this sometimes. I think I had to chase for one metric for 2.5 years and refused to do another project with a team until they were able to tell us the kind of the updated metric, which when we actually got it, they had saved 3.5 weeks of staff time. So it was absolutely worth the repeated emails. And it helped enforce our approach that we need a starting point so we can see what improvements we're making. The way we do this is that once we've had our baseline, we'll then do a post-project follow-up 3 to 6 months after the improvement's gone live. That's really dependent on the type of improvement and whether it's cyclical, that kind of thing. But we'll go back and we'll follow up on the metrics that we've done to see any of the impacts that have been made. We introduced the concept of measuring the scale of an issue really early in the process, and it's been incredibly useful in working with the diverse teams we've worked on across the institution. I mean, for an example, everyone's always worked on a process where there's a dreaded, complicated nightmare element that frustrates them. And that's usually the thing that pushes people to come and fill in an opportunity improvement form. They'll come and say, it's this bit is ruining my life. obviously we're quite a dramatic group, it would seem, at Hartpury. So during and when we start getting into the problem, it's usually during the process mapping that frustrating element is the one that gets the most must improve red post-its all over our mats. An example of this that we had was with the accommodation process. So at Hartpury, we're the biggest provider of residential accommodation for college-age students, which means in practice we have hundreds of teenagers who have moved away from home for the first time, and there are a lot of complicated issues that you might not face at a more traditional university, and our accommodation team have to step in to solve all sorts of difficult situations. Something maybe as simple as a student breaking their leg at a national riding event at the weekend, then we have to move them from their top floor bedroom to a more accessible space temporarily, but we run at almost 100% occupancy on our FE accommodation, so the inevitable kind of tetrising of having to move several people to make it happen can be a nightmare. But when we're process mapping and we're looking at the metrics, we can see that might be a complicated, time-consuming process, but we only have a few of those room moves each year. However, something like the processing of paper accommodation application forms, which happened about 2,000 times a year, it was a much more simple process, but it was very time-consuming and low-level frustrating. With the team, we were able to look at the metrics and focus on the issue and the solution that was going to have the biggest impact. For us, in this case, it was the digitization of the application process. We were able to kind of free up headspace for the team at a different point in the process to manage those trickier, frustrating points that brought them to us originally, because they're not spending so much time on those small but regular inefficiencies. Taking the team on that journey and using the metrics as a way to make data-driven decisions really helped the individuals make sense of what we were doing and why we were doing it. They understood and they agreed as a team that they couldn't fix everything, but what they could fix provided space in other areas for the work. And because I love to share these numbers, it absolutely did work in this example. In the first year, we saved 8 weeks of staff time across several departments. But for us, surprisingly, reporting was the area where we made a massive improvement. It had been identified as one of the process steps, but it wasn't an area that we were focusing on a lot during the improvement. However, through the process benefits exploration that we did with the team, they started recording time spent on various different activities, and the member of the team who did reporting kind of started keeping a note of things, and it was staggering when we came back and saw how much they had saved. Previously, for our accommodation system, only the people that got a room were added onto our system, which meant that if our senior managers were coming down and saying, I want to know how many applications we've had from agriculture students in year 3, it meant that the team had to physically count pieces of paper and count how many people filled those categories. And for those of you that have to provide management information, you'll know that it's not always just that one report and it's not always just that one slice of information. So they were having to do it again and again. So by teaching the team about metrics and encouraging them to collect data, we were able to kind of showcase significant unplanned benefits that they had. And those had been identified by them because they understood it and could see the value in it. So once we measured things, we also have a strand of our work looking at celebrating. So once we've collected all the metrics, we've finished our projects, then we move on to celebrating them in a variety of different ways. But one of the key ones is that for all of our projects, we produce a case study. These case studies are a standard one-page format that our management team are really used to seeing. So our senior managers and management team across the institution have seen quite a few of these. They include an overview of the project, have some quotes and metrics, or if we pick a couple of the key metrics in it. But more importantly, they're really liked by the teams involved. It helps them celebrate the improvements and changes that they're making. For us, these have been an excellent example of where success is breeding success. Where Nikki, who is the director of our team, has shared these at the executive board level, it never fails to pique the curiosity of another manager, of another sort of department head, and we'll end up with a phone call saying, okay, well, Nikki spoke to Tom and apparently you might be able to help us with this. And they've been a wonderful showcase for us. We've recently launched a similar side of it, which is our Celebrating Success process. And this goes alongside one of our training programs. We have a very simple form that allows the wider teams across Hartpury to submit their project info for their continuous improvement projects, and we'll produce the case study for them. They can then take that sort of well-recognised case study into their appraisal, or they can take it to their own team meetings as a quick visual way to showcase the positive impacts that they've been making. What we found, and I think what some people have said in other sessions so far, is that often people didn't think to or know how to share the improvements that we're doing. Often when you've had a big project, you've either gone through that journey and not seen how far you've come, or you just don't really have the tools or the ability to be able to communicate that to tell that story in an effective way. We got feedback that people really liked our case studies and wanted to use them to share what we've done. From our side of things, this idea aims to help us keep track of how that CI culture is spreading across the organisation. Where we've worked with teams on projects or they've done our specified training, they go off and they do that and they apply it at local processes. And by encouraging them to let us know those ripples, we are providing them with a concrete thing that they can have. So they get their form, they get their case study, but then we get to collect those numbers and quantify the impact that we're having on the projects that are being run elsewhere. Finally, we move on to our last area, which is reflection. So I know there've been a couple of things that have come up here, and I've had conversations with colleagues at events like this before saying, we've tried metrics or we've thought about it, but it turned out that we hadn't saved any time or the return on investment wasn't great. So we just sort of stopped asking, which is absolutely understandable if you're only interested in a reduction of staff time, or if you're coming in and not having it's not an embedded part of what you're doing. For us, we take a really, really wide range of metrics. It doesn't always have to be about time saved. It can be about the reduction of touch points in a process, or one that's been really, really key for us, which is knowledge exchange. So making sure there's not just that one person that has all of the information about the key process in their head, and we better absolutely pray that they don't retire. We've all got that. These ones might not be our 1100 hours saved type projects, but they do provide really useful information and help support that ethos of continuous improvement in all its many different flavours. An example of how we've used it in sort of reflection and iterations is with our entry and exit check process. This is a process designed to allow students to highlight damage present in their accommodation when they move in to make sure they're not charged at the end. And in 2022, we moved the entry check process from a paper form to a digital form. Lots of benefits to this. It allowed the centralisation of information, reduced touch points, lots of bits like that. But the actual process of going around the rooms and taking photos of everything was really time consuming. And after 3 years of small improvements and running this process, we were approached by the residential team to see if there was anything more that could be done to improve it. We started investigating options, and we went back and looked at the metrics that had been built into the system that we did. So we had, because we knew we would be asking about it, there are baselines there for us. So we were able to look back on that and prove that the administrative burden of the process and the associated staff time meant that overall the process was costing us as an institution much more than we got in damage fees. And it was a really good demonstration for us of how data-driven decision-making can work for people at a local level. We helped the teams understand that the metrics they were collecting and being able to measure their processes supported them in making a case for getting rid of a process that just didn't work. It also gave us the opportunity to reinforce that guiding principle of keeping improving. So always having those incremental changes. So we came back again. We came back and they said, it was better. Can we make it even better? And we were able to review it and make those tweaks and improvements to the process. I have seen lots and lots of questions popping up in the chat, but I haven't read any of them. So so if anybody wants to read one or ask one. We've also got the rest of the team on the call as well if they want to dive in on any questions.
I think a lot of the chat traffic has been not so much questions but comments on what you were saying, and so but there was just one that came in. With a relatively small team, how do you choose or prioritize projects? Oh, and it keeps jumping from me. To get involved with, is the potential benefits realization a key factor?
So we measure we judge all of our projects against our strategic aims. So we have organizational strategic aims, but then also some aims within CI that we want to kind of get. And so every improvement opportunity that comes in is scored against those on a matrix. Some of them are weighted. So if it's a health and safety thing, then it goes further up the list. And we use that as a way to see which ones we should do. A benefit, something being of a lot of benefit, is incorporated that in that as well. So we look at how many departments would this change impact, but we wouldn't ever, if there was a really important, like a health and safety improvement that needed to be, if we couldn't demonstrate an impact, we would always be looking for other ways that we could manage it. So something like better communications or centralization of knowledge or sharing of knowledge, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Excellent. So lots going on in the chat. I think Nicola's offering to share some stuff.
So for our like soft benefits and things like that, that's another one that we do. We try and feed that in where we can't have those sort of hard metrics. There's always something that we can collect. So,
yeah, I think that would be, if that can be shared, sort of sent through to Stu, and then we can sort of have it. And I guess with the other presentations, the slide decks and what have you, that would be great then to share afterwards. Any other burning questions for Penny and the team before we move on? No.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Penny. And finally, last but by no means least, we've got Eleanor Gaskell-Taylor from UCL. Eleanor, I will leave it over to you.
Thank you. I've also got my colleague Shane Dowell here as well. So I'm Eleanor from UCL. I am the Director of Service Excellence, and Shane is our Head of Continuous Improvement. So we're going to tag team on the presentation. Shane. So we'll talk through kind of at a bit of a high level about, from a UCL perspective, what we mean by continuous improvement culture and how we've looked to embed that into our ways of working at UCL. So our ambition very much is that it becomes fully embedded across UCL and it becomes the way we do things here. It's just part of the norm. So to start with, we've been looking at building our mindset, so building it into our ways of working, make sure that everyone is empowered and takes ownership of making those incremental changes, and that everyone strives to do things a little bit better each day. So that's really what we're aiming for there. And for us, we found that a really important part of building this, and where we've had some real successes, is thinking about respect for our colleagues' expertise. So as continuous improvement practitioners, we're very much the experts in the methodologies and the tools for driving improvements, but our colleagues are the experts in the process. So harnessing all of their knowledge and expertise when we are making improvements has had real success for us. So it's very much doing it with our colleagues rather than us telling them what to do. And also a big part of this has been remembering for our perspective, but also when we talk about continuous improvement with our colleagues, that we're not talking about the people doing things wrong. It's not the people that are the problems, but it's very much the process. Lots of our colleagues are very busy trying their best, but it's the process that's letting them down. It's not the people. And to build that true CI culture, as everyone here I'm sure is very familiar with, it's really vital that we get that customer and end user aspect at the heart of what we do. So that could be our students, our academics, our professional services, some of our business partners, our research partners. So really making sure that people who are doing the process as well as receiving the end goal of the process are at the heart of what we do. And that's been a big lesson for us, and how we make sure that we're not just focusing on the people doing the process that are feeling the pain, but actually we need to make the process better for them, but our end users are critical as well, and it's getting that balance between the two. For us, again, a big part of this is the positive impact on staff wellbeing. So how can we use that to harness embedding the continuous improvement culture? So we want our colleagues to feel a sense of joy and meaning and fulfillment in what they do, and having that continuous improvement culture is helping us do that. So it's empowering staff to help themselves, rather than, you know, where they feel sometimes powerless to make any changes to the way they're doing things. It's about showing and demonstrating that they do have the power to change things, that they can control some aspects of what they're doing, and make their working lives better for themselves and not reliant on everyone to do things for them. So for us, bringing all of these things together has really helped us embed that culture. Thanks, Shane. So I'll just talk you through our journey so far, and I guess to say it is our journey so far. You know, we've come a long way in the last few years, but we've still got a long way to go. But we can really see how we've had some real successes. So when I first joined UCL almost 3 years ago to set up the continuous improvement team, we were at the point where there was some continuous improvement work that happened, but it was very much on a large scale transformation program basis, and that was driving large scale changes rather than thinking about the incremental improvements. It was often delivered through external contractors, consultants, so the people on the ground weren't particularly involved in some of these improvements, so they weren't really buying into it. So that was very much recognised by the leadership at UCL, which is why we as a continuous improvement team were brought in, so a substantive team to be part of the UCL, our UCL colleagues, rather than being temporary contractors that just come in to do things. When we first joined, we had a list of potential projects that we could look at, but they were large, unscoped, a bit too ambitious really for where UCL was at the time. Again, it kind of linked back to trying to change everything all at once rather than looking at what can we change on an incremental basis, what's going to have the biggest impact, and what are staff going to feel the benefits from. And we didn't really have that focus on the smaller scale, which is very much what we wanted to start embedding as a continuous improvement team. We also at that point started some staff training with our senior leaders across UCL. So we did some yellow belt training, but also a number of our senior leaders went on a black belt training course, which the idea of that wasn't that they would then go and deliver projects of their own, but it was very much about at the top starting to embed that mindset and that culture, so that when they were thinking about leading their teams, they were already starting to embed that CI culture into their ways of working. We then sort of moved on from that, moved through our time at UCL, and sort of about a year or so after the team started, we moved to deliver through UCL's Agile Change Portfolio model. So this really helped us focus two things. So really focus on supporting the delivery of the institutional strategy. So a lot of the work that happens in that portfolio is very much about helping the strategy, and I've heard other colleagues here talk about the importance of being able to link the work to the strategy, so that's really helped and supported us. But also because of the agile environment we were in, it really helped enable our incremental improvement work and delivering those small scale changes on an ongoing basis rather than trying to change everything at the same time. So that was a real positive for us. It also, alongside that, we were also delivering sort of local, smaller scale projects outside the portfolios and working with our colleagues to do informal upskilling. So we diversified the range of training and support that we were able to offer. So we could do bite-sized sort of 1 hour sessions on, for example, 5S that meant that our colleagues could then go straight away and use that. Half-day sessions and even full-day sessions to deliver more of those tools and understanding. At the same time, we also looked at which teams across the university we thought might benefit from some more formal training. So there were 2 main groups that we were targeting. So we have supported almost 100 of our colleagues across UCL to green belts. So predominantly staff in our faculties and in our research and innovation areas, because for us, they're the 2 fundamental areas for UCL. If we didn't have our faculties, didn't have our research, there'd be no point to have us. So we wanted to prioritise them and have had successes there, and there's more work that we're doing now to embed that learning with them and help them use that on an ongoing basis. And then most recently, so from January this year, we have joined together and embedded with other teams that were doing similar type of activity in our professional services hub, so our managed service centre, so that we've got a greater focus on that end-to-end. So bringing the Lean Six Sigma, our operational excellence and our automation teams together in one place so that we can deliver that end-to-end service improvement across the university and really have a much bigger impact. So just to summarise, we've really moved from having externally driven and led continuous improvement to being really embedded into the university, so being really recognised and increasingly being a sought after resource from our colleagues. It's a key part of our strategic plan at UCL and features a lot in our service improvement roadmaps across our functions at UCL. So we've been able to see a real, in 3 years, it's been a lot of work. We've been able to see a real difference to where we started. Shane, I'll hand over to you now.
Great, thank you, Eleanor. So I'll talk through in a little bit more detail some of the actual activities that we've been engaged with to build a CI culture at UCL. And the first thing I would say is that I kind of reflecting on the journey that we've been on, it's really important, I would say, to take a multi-pronged approach. Culture is a very difficult thing to perturb and change over time. And I think you have to come at it from a number of angles to actually move the dial on things. The other reflection I'd have is that it's a good idea not to underestimate the impact of the work that you do through your standard service offer in continuous improvement. A lot of those touch points you have with the community are doing a lot of the heavy lifting on embedding and nurturing a CI culture across the organisation. And it also takes time as well. We've tried things out earlier on in the development of the CI team, and they didn't really stick and they didn't really work because the institutional appetite wasn't really there. But then we've tried the same thing, a couple of years down the line, and actually we're getting a lot more receptiveness to it, more volunteers, more people wanting to get involved. So I would also say don't be disheartened if you try something and it doesn't work. It might just be that the time's not right at that point, and try it down the line and you'll get a very different reaction. So in terms of the kinds of activities we do to build a CI culture, some of it comes through the work we do in shaping projects. So this is particularly helpful, I think, when you're working with teams or departments that are quite new to continuous improvement. It's all very well having the training and understanding a bit about the theory and the application of the tools, but it's another thing to actually think, well, I've got this particular problem or this particular opportunity. So what do I need to do to take me from the problem opportunity through to solution? So we work with teams to help shape a delivery model for their particular piece of work. And that might be, you know, some simple steps that they can take, like through maybe using the PDCA approach to own their own problems and develop their own solutions. It might be that they need a bit of assistance, say through a rapid improvement event, Kaizen type event, or it might be that actually what they're going after is quite a big, difficult, challenging piece of work that might need a business case and some additional support to enable the delivery of it. So we work with teams to help them get from idea to execution. We also do delivery work, obviously, and the way that we frame the delivery work to support the growth of a CI culture is that we train people in how to use the tools and how to use the Lean Six Sigma methodology as a part of those delivery workshops. So what that means is people can understand how to approach a process issue or a process problem, can be stepped through the different things that they need to do to work through that, but also it means that they go away from the particular project itself with an understanding of process improvement and a process improvement methodology that they can then use in their own departments with their own team. So it kind of helps to kind of grow the potential. And we've even had people say to us after doing workshops with us that they've used the tools and techniques that we open them up to in their personal lives. So we've had people, you know, 5S'ing their sheds and process mapping their morning routines and this kind of thing. So it really does help it to kind of stick and become a part of the mindset. Outreach is really important. It's been really interesting to hear about what others are doing in this space on the call. We've got a suite of outreach training activities that we use, and I'll do a bit of a deeper dive on those in a minute. But the general philosophy we take to this is it's all about helping you to help yourselves. You know, we'll give you the frameworks, we'll give you the approach, but it's about enabling you to be able to go away and deal with those kind of process problems in your own department where you have that control. Leadership is another area where we've done a lot of work, and I'd say this has been really important to how continuous improvement has become a really important part of the strategy at UCL. And as Ellen was saying, although the team's been deployed in different ways, we've always been a part of that strategy and seen as a really important capability to deliver against the organisational ambitions. And I say this is in no small part down to the effort that's been put into working with senior leaders. I mean, we've had very senior members of staff training up as black belts, and that's great because it means they understand the value of CI, understand its potential and capabilities, they understand the language. So when we're talking to them about it, they're already halfway there. It's not like we have to go and persuade them of of what CI can really bring to the table. We also work with leadership at all different levels as well. So we work into departmental managers, team managers as well. And that's really important because if you've got somebody in a team that wants to do some CI work, but they're not supported by their manager, or they don't understand, the manager's not really kind of familiar with that, then it can create a bit of a barrier to building that CI culture up. So leadership has been really important for opening doors and enabling that culture to spread through the organisation. So for our upskilling and outreach work, we've got quite a suite we've been building up over a good couple of years now. As Eleanor mentioned, we use an external supplier to do formal Lean Six Sigma training. So far we've got 72 green belts and 19 black belts trained. So we've got quite a big cohort of trained individuals now spread throughout the organisation, which is very good. We also offer a number of bite-sized sessions. These can be anything from sort of 60-minute, 90-minute sessions where we run through a particular tool or a particular approach. So we're giving people the kind of practical capabilities to be able to use this tool and use it in their own particular areas. And we do things like 5S, we've got a session on psychological safety, we've got standard work, we've got A3 project management, lots of kind of tools and approaches that people can just take away and apply in their own particular areas of work. We also do half-day and all-day workshops. These are in person, very hands-on. We run a simulation, so we have a CI game that people play, and that's really great for helping people to understand that you've got the solutions already. You know the answers, and kind of stepping through this process will get you to those answers, and you can make these differences. And it doesn't take an enormous effort to get there. And we also have a kind of a scaled down framework really for helping people to work through their particular process problems. So we did a bit on writing a good problem statement, being clear about what the thing is that you're trying to resolve, doing a bit of customer needs analysis, doing some process mapping, do some waste elimination and action planning. So they go away with this quite neat framework that just helps them step through the different stages to get them from process problem to process solution. And that learning is supported and scaffolded by that hands-on experience of running a simulation with them. We've also recently introduced a shorter online training as well. Not everybody wants to do in person, so online enables us to reach a wider audience. Recently introduced some facilitator training as well, and I would give a big shout out to everybody on the Lean HE network for the conversation that happened recently through the Disc Mail around facilitator training. There was some brilliant comments and resources shared there, which were really well timed for us when we were thinking about this. So we've been able to draw on that expertise out there. So thank you for sharing. We also have done coaching and mentoring of projects, particularly people who have come through the training, the formal training, and want to do a process improvement project in their own particular department. So we've done some coaching and mentoring to help and support them, and also challenge them when they need to be challenged around how to implement the approaches. More recently, we have also introduced, or in the process of introducing, a community of practice. I think this is going to be quite transformational for how we connect people up at UCL, because it's such a large organisation. We've got quite a number now of trained and interested and willing practitioners out there. But the challenge has always been, well, how do you bring these people together? How do you get them to share their experiences? How do you get them to share their knowledge? Where do you get that, give them that peer support? So we've put a lot of work into bringing together a community of practice now to try to do some of that, so that it's not kind of people working in pockets, but people working in a much more networked and connected way across UCL. So we've got high hopes for this. And actually, just going back to my earlier point about things taking time, we did try and do this a couple of years ago, and there was next to no interest. But we've had a very, very different reaction now. We've got lots of people volunteering for it. We've got lots of people that want to get involved. We had a cohort recently go through the formal training, and they were really keen to get going and have put their names down to help and support this. So I think this is going to be a really helpful way of bringing people together across the university. In terms of, I guess, evidence for how well our approach is going, we get really good feedback from pretty much all of the touch points we have with the community at UCL. So I've taken a sample of some feedback we had for some of our upskilling sessions recently, and we had 99% of people attending those sessions saying, my knowledge of CI has improved. That's obviously what we want. They are learning something when they come and do the sessions with us. That's really important. What I think is also probably more important is that 95% said that they feel much more confident now about using these approaches to make improvements in their sphere of influence. So that kind of substantiates that empowerment argument that people are coming to our training, they're learning something, and they're feeling confident about going back and using these tools, using their approaches in their own particular areas of influence. So that's really, really encouraging. A similar story with people who come to our workshops. 100% say we've identified improvements to the process. That's quite a relief. We want them to say that after they come and do some delivery projects with us. And also they said that their knowledge of how to improve the processes has increased as well. So again, it's supporting that. I'm not just doing it on this discrete project, but I'm learning the ropes. I'm learning this approach, and I can go and do this elsewhere outside of the particular project environment. In terms of qualitative feedback, I've taken two examples here that I think are quite well. One of them, the top one's very representative of the sort of feedback we get, where people saying, I've learned a lot about continuous improvement mindset and how to break down larger problems. And one I really like is, converting a skeptic, which always tells you, you're doing a good job in this area. Was somebody who came to one of our workshops said, I was initially skeptical about this approach to process improvement, but I'm a convert having seen how successful it was. So that, I find that very encouraging that, the skeptics are coming on board, and it feels that, we're definitely winning hearts and minds as we go along. So I think, Ellen, I think there's one more slide for you to talk to about, apologies, no, just some lessons before we go on to that. So the lessons that we've learned along the way, I would definitely emphasize the importance of working with leadership at all levels. It really does open doors, and it really does help kind of smooth the path. We've also seen that through that work with leadership, that CI is seen as a strategic capability, and that's helped it form a part of the strategic plan and as a capability that the university wants to invest in and is invested in. We also seize opportunities to promote CI, so it's really good on those other on the other presentations today to see how people are going out and celebrating successes. We try and do similar things as well. So we like to go out and talk about the work that we do, talk about the successes that we've had, promote the approaches that we take, and really do our best to kind of to draw attention to the work that we're doing. We also collaborate with other change disciplines, so I think this is really helpful for enabling the changes that we get through our project work to land. We work with change managers, we work with business analysts, we work with project managers, and I think combining those expertise and those different disciplines is really helpful for doing good work that lands well. And going back to Eleanor's point on that first slide, we're very respectful of the experts. The knowledge comes from those people doing the process. They know it better than anyone. The solutions are in their heads, and our job is to be led by them, to work with them to get those solutions out into the open. So that's not the end of our journey. We've got some next steps, which I'll hand over to you, Eleanor, to talk to.
Thank you. So I won't dwell on these, so I know we're running out of time, but as we've talked about, so this is really just the start. The last 3 years have been a lot of work, and we've moved a long way, but UCL is a huge organisation, so there's still lots of work for us to do to really embed CI culture across the whole institution. So our immediate priorities are looking to moving towards that more embedded approach. So how can we improve that end-to-end service, merging the different teams? We are looking to improve the network of practitioners that we've got in terms of how they then use what they've learned going forward. So the community of practice, as Shane mentioned. And the other big area for us is doing more of that benefits tracking. So how can we really demonstrate the impact that all of this is having to our colleagues, how they feel, but also some of the real tangible benefits that are helping the university become more sustainable in the long term. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Shane and Eleanor, and thank you to all our speakers. I'm very mindful that we're almost bang on time, so I've put some links in the chat. I had some slides I was going to share in terms of other things coming up, but I've put those things in the chat. If you have any further questions or you have any comments about how you've embedded continuous improvement, feel free to add to the Miro board. Or you might want to think about submitting an abstract for the conference in October. We open for bookings and we open for abstracts on the 4th of March. So watch this space. In terms of the North Midlands, our next seminar, and I can't remember if we've actually got a date in the diary, but we'll circulate that. Hillary's on it, I can see. We're looking very much at digital and tooling and how we can utilise those to help with our process improvement journey, with a view to set up a subgroup almost across Lean HE in the UK, looking at digital tools and skills for process improvement. So watch this space. We will circulate details about that as soon as possible. Other than that, thank you, everyone. We will share the slides. We'll endeavour to get the recording up onto the YouTube channel. That's always a challenge. It's quite a big recording, but we'll let you know. And if presenters could share your slides, your output, so that we can share those with the attendees, that would be great. Thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.